All right, folks, welcome to episode 45 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Missed last week. Good to be back with you. Jeremy Palmer here, Clark Palmer. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. We got some NFL preseason games happening now. So, it's every sports show is going to be wall-to-wall NFL, pretty much going forward from here until
massive overreaction to the preseason. The next few weeks are just going to be massive overreaction to preseason games.
Yeah.
So, like I said before we started before we started, I was like, look, some of you people are saying the NFL football's back. No, this is the preseason. This is not real football. Football is not back. Okay, I understand that we're all a bunch of crackheads who are hopelessly addicted to football, but football is not back. Okay, we got a few more weeks.
Yeah, thank goodness it's only 3 preseason games these days and not 4 like it used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a lot of, well, this team looked good and this team didn't look good and, this team looked like this. And, it's kind of, I pretty much have a standard rule. I don't watch preseason. Especially now, most teams don't even play a lot of their starters, and even if they do, they play them in the first quarter, and that's pretty much it. For a lot of these guys, especially veteran players, preseason is completely useless. So, can't.
Some teams are they're even evolving to we're not even playing our starters. Like the Rams don't. There's probably some other teams I can't think of, but that they don't really buy into the preseason. I mean, I think for some players it probably helps, but for others, there's just a risk of injury, and why would you do that?
Even the Patriots don't play much in the preseason now.
Right.
So it's when Bill Belichick's on it, it's generally that's what the league's going to. So but that being said, we got stories to talk about. So since we've been gone a while, we have not got to talk about our good old pals, the Miami Dolphins. Got themselves into some trouble. They got in trouble with the NFL for tampering, and apparently, they were talking to, the story is, I guess they were talking to Tom Brady in 2019 when he was still playing for the Patriots. They were talking to Tom Brady last year. They were talking to Sean Payton and, his agent, when he was still under contract with the Saints. Well, I'm sorry, he still is under contract with the Saints.
Yeah.
But so he's been, so they haven't been allowed to talk to him the whole time. And apparently Tom Brady is good friends with Bruce Beal. Bruce Beal is like the second in command with the Dolphins. He would basically be the guy that takes over if anything happens with Stephen Ross. So basically he was talking to Brady, pretty much constantly. And, so my first overall take on this is, the Dolphins lost their first round pick in the next draft, and they got fined $1.5 million, and Stephen Ross is suspended from the team until October. So, my overall take on this is that, I mean, it's typical Miami Dolphins. They not only do they do this tampering stuff that basically every team does, but they do it, out in the open, emails, text messages, things that you can get a hold of, that you could use as evidence against you. And, the NFL said this is the most egregious and flagrant, tampering that they've ever seen, which, way to go, Dolphins. Fantastic. You managed to do all this crap. You tried to cheat. You didn't even do very well at it. And then the NFL basically, this kind of reminds me of what the NBA did when, Tim Donaghy was found to be fixing games or whatever. And the NBA is like, he's a rogue official. It's no big deal, blah, blah, blah. The NFL basically did the same thing with Stephen Ross trying to tank games and pay the coach to lose. He was joking, They basically said, he was just kidding around. Okay, so let me get this straight. He's tampering with all of these people, but this time he's kidding around.
Yeah.
I'm just, as usual, I am disgusted with the way the Dolphins do things. They try to cheat. They can't even figure out how to do that correctly. And, the Dolphins have basically set themselves up with next year's draft. They they made that trade with San Francisco, so San Francisco could draft Trey Lance with the third pick. And so the Dolphins, the whole idea was, well, all right, so we'll see how this year goes. If we want to draft a quarterback, well, we've got 2 first-round picks next year. We might be able to do something with that. Well, that whole plan just turned to dust. Now they have San Francisco's pick, which is not likely to be very high, and they don't have the ammunition to really move up at all, even if they wanted to. So basically, we're stuck. The Dolphins are now stuck with with Tua is going to be our quarterback for this year and next year. I don't think there's any way around that because there's nobody else out there that they're going to get, and especially not anybody who's cheaper. So, but I don't want to monopolize the whole time. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm reminded of there was a line from a sitcom. I think the sitcom was Grounded for Life, and the plot line was basically that it's like a family, and the plot line was the father was having a conversation with his daughter and her boyfriend, and just sort of explaining to them, like he said, look, I understand that you guys are going to be kind of fooling around a little bit, but have the decency to sneak around. Okay, and I'm just reminded of that when you're talking about Stephen Ross. Have the decency to sneak around. If you're going to break the rules, try not to get caught. Like, at the very least. If you get caught, you get caught. But don't just, sit there just whatever. We'll just send them text messages and emails. It'll be fine. Yeah, we won't get caught.
Yeah, try to hide it at least. At least do some kind of due diligence. And then Stephen Ross puts out a statement where he disagrees with the NFL's findings. It's like, bro, there's not really much for you to dispute here. Like, you got caught. You did what, do a lot of other teams do this? Yeah. They do it a lot better than you.
They don't get caught.
Right. They're much smarter than you are. I don't know what to say. Like, you can't even hide it. Not only do
the Dolphins suck, they can't even break the rules properly.
It's unbelievable. This is supposed to be, this is supposed to be the owner of the football team? It's like, dude, can you tie your shoes? Like, what can you do?
Yeah, it's like if you're trying to get around the rules in other businesses, do you do it this way too? Do you just not care because it's as people have said, like for people who own NFL teams, owning a sports team is like a toy. The sports team is like a toy, and you just kind of do whatever you want with it. So I guess maybe they just don't put the same level of care and consideration into the actions they take with their team, but
yeah, I was listening to the GM Shuffle podcast, and Michael Lombardi was basically saying, like, you can tell, like, that this whole we believe in Tua thing is propaganda from the owner. Like, you can tell this basically shows you the owner is really involved in a lot of this stuff, and is so a lot of the stuff that you hear out of the Dolphins is probably owner propaganda. It's probably nonsense that the owner is putting out there to try to get us to believe, whatever narrative he thinks. And so, basically, I think with the Dolphins, we've been in NFL purgatory for a while. Like, we're not bad enough to get, a great player to turn the franchise around, and we're not good enough, to go anywhere, to win any playoff games. So it's just, it's this perpetual cycle that we're keeping ourselves in. And listen, that being said, I do think the Dolphins are going to be good this year. I'm not like,
I'm starting to come around to that. I still have concerns, but at the very least, I think there's going to be some games they play that are actually going to be fun to watch. Assuming they can run the ball, I think they'll be able to create some fun stuff. And, Tua will have some moments where you're like, oh, it looks pretty good. So
yeah, I do think they're going to be pretty good. Yes, do they? If they obviously things could go wrong. For every team. If you have some injuries to the wrong players, it could be a serious problem. Right. I get that, but at the same time, I do think the Dolphins are going to be good. But I think it's all fool's gold. Like they're going to be good, but they're not going to be great. They'll hit whatever their ceiling is this year. But what's their ceiling? 10 wins? Like, I just don't. I don't have a lot of positive feelings. I just feel like we're going to be stuck. We're stuck in the same place because obviously the ownership is clueless, and
Yeah, and I will say this: In fairness to Tua, okay, because I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he'll ever be an elite quarterback. But I guess I'm coming around a little bit more on the idea that he's been kind of screwed because he's in a bad situation.
Right.
This year, I think you can take that out because he's got a bunch of weapons. He's got an offensive coach. It looks like him and the coach got a good relationship and all that stuff. But he didn't really come into the best situation. So, and that matters. So I'll say that. But I mean, still, you got to go out there and whatever your situation is, you got to go out there and perform. And I feel like he's had plenty of opportunities and he hasn't gotten it done. But I'll give him some leeway on that a little bit. I mean, the Dolphins are kind of a mess.
Yeah, and to his credit, they're asking him questions about, well, what do you think about the Dolphins trying to get Tom Brady? And he's like, look,
yeah,
they drafted me, like, so I'm gonna,
right.
I'm not worried about that. And so I give him a lot of credit for being a good human being and addressing this stuff the right way and not letting it turn into a mess, like, because somebody made the point this week that there's other quarterbacks who tend to rile stuff up and make things worse by saying things to the media, and Tua doesn't do that. So I think he should be given some credit for that. So what topic did you want to talk about?
Well, real quick, because we mentioned preseason a little bit, ridiculous take of the week, and I guess this is sort of tongue-in-cheek because I feel like Nick Wright knew this when he was giving the take because this is completely ridiculous. The Titans played the Ravens, I think, in a preseason game. I don't know because I wasn't watching because I don't watch preseason football because there's no point. But the Titans drafted Malik Willis. Remember that he was he played at Liberty and he was one of the quarterbacks that everybody was talking about before the draft, right? And he fell a little bit and the Titans drafted him. And from what I understand, because again, I wasn't watching, he ran around a bunch and then, Mike Vrabel pulled him because he just kept running around and he wasn't making throws. So, but anyway, so on First Things First, Nick Wright was saying, well, I mean, you got to have Ryan Tannehill has to have like the shortest leash in the league. Because, I mean, the last 3 years, the way the season's ended, I mean, he's played really poorly in these playoff games, and it's been his fault. And I'm just like, okay, so hang on. Okay. And I've started to turn into a Ryan Tannehill apologist, but I do want to make clear, I don't think he's an elite quarterback, but I'm sorry, he's made the playoffs 3 years in a row. Find me the other quarterbacks outside of the elite best of the best quarterbacks who've made the playoffs 3 years in a row. Dak Prescott can't even make the playoffs 2 years in a row. Kirk Cousins hasn't made the playoffs 2 years in a row. So, and Derrick Henry, who's obviously a major focal point of their offense, he's had injuries, and the Titans continue to win because Tannehill makes plays. Is he an elite quarterback? No, but you're telling me you're just going to easily find some other quarterback who's just going to help you get to the playoffs every year? Do you realize how difficult that is? So, and it was really funny because they had Eric Mangini on there. And so after Nick Wright says his whole piece, Mangini goes, well, I think it's really good that we're not overreacting to the preseason and, somebody just running around a few times in a game and thinking we should, completely change our plans for the entire season based on one preseason game.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, Malik Willis was drafted in the third round. So, Tennessee likes him, but they obviously don't feel that strongly about him. That's number one.
Second of all, yeah, well, why? Okay, look, if you think that he could be your quarterback of the future, fine. But I don't think he's ready to go now. And also, Tannehill's a fine quarterback to have, okay? If you're well coached and you play well in the other phases of the game, you can win games, potentially make the playoffs. Your division's not, you got Jacksonville, who was kind of a mess last year. We'll see. Then you got Houston. Okay. Indianapolis is good, but they don't have a bunch of really good receivers. Matt Ryan's older. The Colts tend to start slowly. Like, what is the, and Nick Wright saying, oh, well, there's all this emotional baggage from him throwing interceptions last year. And it's just like, I understand that, but What is the alternative? Like, you can't just say that we should do something if you don't have a viable alternative.
Right. The rookie quarterback is not going to come in and be better than Ryan Tannehill. Like that we know that's not going to happen. So yeah, I think Ryan Tannehill is basically just Jimmy Garoppolo on the East Coast. I mean, it's basically the same thing. You put the right stuff around him, the guy's going to win. Do I want him as my franchise quarterback? No. But, that doesn't mean that, you just – so, what are you supposed to do? Just abandon it and, screw it. We'll win 4 games this year. We're fine. That's not how sports work. I would like to have a better quarterback than Tua, but is he our best option right now? Yeah. By a wide margin. So yeah, and I like the point that you're making, like, Colin Cowherd is freaking out. Why doesn't anybody pick up Jimmy Garoppolo? And it's like, well, he's not going to be your franchise quarterback. He's in the last year of his deal, so whoever trades for him, you're going to have to decide, are you going to give him an extension or not? Nobody wants to be on the hook for that, and he makes $25 million this year.
Yeah.
I can give you all kinds of reasons why no one has picked him up yet. Do I think someone will eventually? Yeah, sure. If San Francisco releases him, or the price gets to where it's like, oh well, shoot, we'll take him. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens. But yeah, that's I love the preseason football takes. They're fantastic. Let's take this guy who played against a defense that didn't ever change. He probably played against the same set defense the whole time.
Everybody, you guys have to understand this, okay? They're not, on offense, they're not going to run any of the stuff that they're going to run during the season because they don't want to show it. They don't want film of it, so then you can prepare for it when the season starts, okay? And the same thing with defense. They're not going to, literally, for the guys who are already on the team, you're just kind of going out there, you're going through the motions, you're running around, you're just trying to get yourself ready to play an actual game, okay? And then there's other guys who are out there who are just trying to make the team. Okay, so the idea that you're going to take now, look, I will say there's a couple things that you can maybe take from preseason. Look, if on offense, your first team offense against their first team defense, and their first team defense isn't running anything complicated, and you can't move the ball like throughout the preseason, that's a problem. Okay, beyond that, I'm kind of. I don't know. You get injured, and if you get a big injury, then that obviously can affect you for the rest of the season. But beyond that, I don't really see how much you can actually take from the preseason.
Yeah, I look for, if I was going to watch a preseason game, I would look for,
right.
I'm looking for fluidity. Like, how does it, are they getting in and out of stuff quick? Are they, does it look like they know what they're doing? That's what I'm looking for. I don't really care about, the execution, okay, a little bit. But I'm not looking for, oh geez, they're going to be a throw it down the field team, or this team's going to, it's really hard to take anything legitimate from preseason, and I think, it's just, it's really difficult, and we can't, it really sucks that, all these sports shows, like, they're just going to grab from whatever preseason games and go, well, this guy looked good, so he must be good, and
yeah,
I wish it worked that way, but you can't really practice. It's hard to practice football the same way that you practice other sports. Like
right.
in baseball, you can play the All-Star game and you can basically play the same way that you would play during the season. That sport completely lends itself to it. Basketball, kinda, you just want to, get out there, get some run in, get some cardio in, see how stuff right. flows, but you can't, it's really hard to tell a lot from it.
Right.
So the ongoing saga of Deshaun Watson, so since we've been gone, the NFL and the independent.
First, real quick, you want to hear a bad joke? So Deshaun Watson actually played in the preseason game against the Jaguars. I gotta say, he looked a little stiff. I don't know.
Oh boy.
I really shouldn't laugh.
Warming up my seat in hell.
Yeah, or whatever.
So the NFL and their independent arbitrator basically said that came out with their findings and basically said that it should be a 6-game suspension, but here's the thing with that. They're basing the 6-game suspension off of precedent in the NFL. And if you've been paying any attention to the NFL for the last 20 years, it's a goddamn mess as far as precedent goes. We suspend Tom Brady 4 games for deflating footballs. We suspend Ben Roethlisberger 6 games for being charged with sexual assault. Right. So the whole thing is a mess. But what I took from it was she basically said that his behavior was egregious and predatory. And she didn't think that the sexual acts were violent.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Not sure how that works. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to go too deep into that because the whole thing sounds pretty violent to me. And then the NFL appealed it, which basically means, Roger Goodell can make a decision to increase the suspension, and then the Players Association can sue them. So look, before we get into some of my other thoughts, my first thought is the NFL should suspend him as long as they possibly can. As far as I'm concerned, if you have cases against you, you shouldn't be allowed to play. That's my take on it. You can say it's too harsh if you want. I don't think it is. I think in 2022, this is the way that the world works. So I think the NFL should go for the whole thing. Suspend them, say you're out for a year, let the Players Association sue them if they want to, and it's sad that this is basically going to come down to what the two sides can negotiate as far as going to court goes. So it just depends on, how strong they feel their case is, which is disgusting in itself.
Right.
Yeah, I think if I'm the NFL and everybody's like, well, you don't want this to linger on and be the subject what everybody's talking about, and it's like, yeah, I don't care about that. Do what's right. Like, if I'm the NFL, I'm suspending him. I'm suspending him for a year. They want to sue me and get it lowered. Go ahead. I'm not. To me, I'm not backing down. Now, and basically, from what I understand is if Deshaun Watson were to appeal that after the decision's made, he still is going to be out 6 games because basically they're not going to fight that. So he'll still be out 6 games no matter what. So anyway, I have some other thoughts, but I'll give you the floor.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Well, first of all, there's so many things that were occurring to me throughout this whole thing. So, and this is just sort of more of like a general point about professional sports and then dealing with players doing stuff off the field, like breaking the law off the field. Okay. And let me finish this whole thing because at first it may sound like I'm saying one thing when I'm really not. We have a criminal justice system and a civil justice system to deal with crimes and to deal with other disputes and accusations and things of that nature. Okay, we have that. Professional sports leagues don't do that. Okay, so there really isn't due process and stuff when it comes to discipline from a professional sports league or anything like that. When people go on the radio or on TV and they're talking about this is the court of public opinion. Okay. So when people kind of say, well, this feels a punishment feels arbitrary or something. Well, this is all kind of arbitrary, right? Because remember, this is all optics. Okay. The NFL suspending Deshaun Watson for 6 games or the whole season or for the rest of his career is not going to stop sexual assault. Okay. That's not what this is about. This isn't about punishing him for what he allegedly did and, all those things, or trying to get retribution for the victims. This has nothing to do with that. This is all optics. All of this is because this looks really bad for the NFL and they want to look like they give a shit and they're actually taking this seriously and doing something. And because this is a totally unprecedented situation, they obviously want to give a completely unprecedented punishment.
Right.
Okay. To make it look like they know what the hell they're doing. Okay. So when people get on the radio or on TV and say, well, this guy only got 6 games, and there's no precedent for this. So this is all arbitrary. Okay. What do you want them to do? Create individual rules for suspensions for, a plethora of illegal activity? Do you want him to have like the R. Kelly rule? Like you get 8 games if you pee on anybody. Like what are we supposed to, like, I don't understand. Like what, you know, because they don't have rules for each specific thing, you know.
Right.
And the other thing you have to understand is because this is all optics, you know, when the retired judge gave the 6 games, she doesn't like work for the NFL really. I mean, she sort of is in this capacity, but she's not. Roger Goodell's job is to protect its optics, again, is to protect the image of the league, okay? Because this is all about image. So when he's deciding on discipline, it's not just about, well, what did we do before for this guy, or what should be the standard for this type of illegal conduct? No, it's all about how does this look, and how does it look if we don't punish them harshly? How does it look if we punish them harshly? How does, you know, the rest of this go? And as far as you were saying about people don't think this should linger, okay. To me, that's a completely ridiculous argument. Because if this situation lingers, it'll be because Deshaun Watson decided to appeal it. Okay? Who looks bad in that scenario? Who put himself into this situation? Deshaun Watson. For the most part, people think that he did this stuff. Or at least he at least did some of it.
The judge basically said he did. So
yeah, exactly. So when people look at this, I mean, are they going to be mad at the NFL, or are they just going to think Deshaun Watson's a creep? I kind of feel like they're just going to think Deshaun Watson's a creep. I don't really think, for the most part, unlike some of these past situations, I think everyone's pretty much on Roger Goodell's side. They're creeped out by this, and they think this guy should be severely punished. So, you know, I probably have some other thoughts on it, but for right now, that was something that I just was thinking of, that I was just getting tired of hearing these, you know, like, well, what about due process, and what about blah, 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 and it's just like, and you'll see comments online about, well, 2 grand juries didn't indict him. It's like, okay, fine. Like, you know, I heard something on the Dan Le Batard show that he was saying the standard for indicting someone by a grand jury for sexual assault in Texas is apparently outlandish or something, or it's really hard to do. So that might have something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't like this argument where, well, you want to get this over and done with. You don't want this to linger on, and it's like, yeah, but he's not going to be playing. So I don't.
Right.
I don't quite get it. Like, you know, when the Tom Brady thing happened and they went into court, did anybody care? Like, you know, yeah, it took a long time, but so what? You know, like I don't subscribe to this idea. The NFL should do the right thing for them and not worry so much about, you know, well, we got to manage this and, you know, we got to try to come to an agreement. I understand the idea of coming to an agreement so this doesn't, you know, I get that, but that's not my opinion here. That's not what the NFL should do. The NFL should come down as hard as they possibly can because they've been way too soft in the past on this stuff. I do appreciate, you know, and listen, this is not a we give the NFL credit podcast. I bash the NFL at every opportunity because of all of the stuff they do that is messed up and wrong. So to me, the NFL wants to take their time and figure this out. Go right ahead. I have no problem with it because it's a hell of a lot better than when they just wing it and just decide something. And, you know, Deshaun Watson, I guess, apologized the other day. Like, okay, yeah, that might mean something if you hadn't maintained that you didn't do anything wrong the entire time. Meanwhile, you settled all of these cases out of court because you know you did something wrong. And you don't want it going to court and coming out all of the stuff that you did that was wrong. So, you know, once we get past this whole suspension thing, we get it. You know, the discussion has to be: can he keep himself out of trouble? Like, can he maintain a reasonable life? You know, because
okay, say he has another situation come up. Say he's suspended a year, and then next year something else comes up. At that point, is it like indefinite suspension? Like, what do we do?
Yeah,
I would be curious.
Yeah, you need to, like, if you're the NFL, you need to make it clear with this that, dude, this can't happen. Like, this can't happen, and he needs to be, and, you know, to add on to that, he should be fined. Like, they restructured his contract so he only makes $1 million. So, to me, if I'm the NFL, I'm fining him. I think he made $10 million last year. I'm fining him whatever he made last year. So essentially,
and then if you suspend him a year this year, it's basically like you got a 2-year suspension.
Exactly right. Which is, you know, that's exactly what they should do. But yeah, you can't trust Deshaun Watson. You can't trust the Cleveland Browns, And, I don't think any of these other teams are happy with what the Cleveland Browns did. So I don't think there's going to be much pushback. I think Roger Goodell, I heard a lot of people making the point this week that Roger Goodell is going to have most of the owners behind him. So I think I think if he really wants to go hard on this, I think he can. I don't think this is.
Well, the other thing is, look, if Deshaun Watson and his people want to file or the NFLPA wants to file a lawsuit, go right ahead. Brady filed a lawsuit and nothing happened. Okay, right. He got suspended 4 games. He just delayed the 4-game suspension. Okay, so if you really think you're going to go to court and they're going to, a court's going to decide to overrule what a private organization decided to do, good luck. I don't think that's likely to happen.
Yeah, and the court's going to be ruling on whether the NFL has the power to suspend him. They're not going to be ruling on anything Deshaun Watson did. So, and it's like, well, the NFL doesn't want to go to court and lose. I mean, to me, that's a minor. So what? Yeah, you might lose. So what? You got the NFL.
Might, but the odds of them losing are pretty slim.
The NFL's makes $11 billion a year. Who cares? Like they got money. They got money to deal with this problem. I don't want to hear the we don't want to follow this. Man, they didn't follow through on the Washington Redskins. I know this punishment for the Dolphins is because of what's going on right now. Like if there wasn't all this other stuff happening,
and Brian Flores filed the lawsuit,
right? Yeah, so that they're in save face mode at a bunch of these things. But anyway, we could talk about this all day. But I just want to say I'm disgusted by Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I hope he gets a year. I hope that ends up being the thing. I hear people saying 12 games. No, I want the year. I want 17 games. You're out.
Yeah, I do too. And listen, nobody wants to have a quarterback on their team more than me. But I am so glad that the Dolphins dodged that bullet and did not go after Deshaun Watson. I do not want to be in the fan base that has to choose whether to root for this asshole.
Say what you will about Tua, but he seems like a good dude. Okay, he just got married recently, apparently, so fine.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Tua getting into this kind of trouble ever.
I'm not worried about Tua the guy. Tua the quarterback, I got questions, but
Yep. All right, so moving on. So Clark, have you ever tried a mind-altering psychotropic substance?
Well, since we're on a podcast, I'm not really going to answer that, but I'll just say this.
He's taking the 5th on the podcast, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll say this. Obviously, we're talking about the Aaron Rodgers thing. He did ayahuasca. I guess he didn't do it this offseason. He did it last year, right? I
don't think this is the first time he's done it.
Okay, that would make sense. So anyway, he was on a podcast and they were kind of talking about it. And he was talking about how it was a life-altering experience for him, and it kind of gave him a different perspective on things. And of course, predictably, they talk about this on sports talk radio, and a bunch of alpha dudes who are into making money and stuff. You talk to them about, doing mushrooms or doing LSD or ayahuasca or something, and they're just like, oh, you're a hippie, you're a tree-hugging hippie loser. Like, this is ridiculous. So that was more or less the reaction to it. I mean, Colin Cowherd was like, there's professionals you can go to. You don't need to take a substance and throw up on your carpet or whatever. Okay. I don't necessarily want to defend Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is kind of a weirdo. And he's kind of selfish and narcissistic. And even if you listen to some of the podcasts, which I did listen to some of the podcasts, it's one of those things where he's like, oh, it gave me a different perspective on it. And it's all this stuff about it. It changed me and I and me, and it made me feel better about myself. And, it seems very selfish and narcissistic. Okay. But I did want to make I guess the first thing I'll just say is that in the off season, him doing this, I don't really have a problem with. Now, him doing LSD during the season, actually, I think I would support that. I think I'd like to see him play quarterback on LSD. That'd be kind of fun. But no. I think as an organization, you don't want your players doing that during the season. Now, I think some opinions are starting to change about marijuana in terms of like being a painkiller and helping people recover from, extreme physical activity and physical punishment that players take in the NFL. And I think that that's going to be an evolving thing. But I guess the main point I just wanted to make is that let's not have the same reaction to psychedelic drugs that we've had in the past, because basically these drugs were being studied and then you had like the 60s happen, and then there was the war on drugs, and then the studying stopped. Okay? Because they've started to kind of do research on some of this stuff again, and they are finding, interestingly enough, they're finding some benefits, potentially. There needs to be more research, but it is interesting how some people take these drugs and it changes their perspective on stuff, and it may help them deal with depression and anxiety and a wide variety of other things. So people shouldn't just dismiss this offhand. There is research being done on it. Now, when Colin Cowherd says thousands of people have died from taking these different drugs, okay, that's true, but thousands of people have died from drinking alcohol and doing, more illicit drugs. People have died from doing prescription drugs. A bunch of people died from doing OxyContin and other opioids, which everybody said was fine for, a long time. So let's not just dismiss this offhand, but it is kind of difficult to defend Aaron Rodgers when he, he's saying all this stuff and he seems to be kind of a handful and he seems to be kind of narcissistic. And he's losing playoff games at home to the 49ers when the Packers are the better team. Like, it becomes harder to defend. But, again, like I said, I don't want people to just dismiss this stuff offhand and just give this sort of, like, meathead, stupid answer. Oh, don't do drugs, man. You're a freaking loser. It's like, I don't know. That was more or less what I wanted to say.
Yeah, what's funny about this is, like, I think it was a few months ago, I was listening to a podcast, and Ron White, the comedian, I guess he did ayahuasca too.
Okay.
And he was kind of describing, what it was like. And I mean, to him, he wasn't describing it as like, oh my God, I had this tremendous benefit. He was just like, yeah, it was, it was kind of interesting. I don't think he was like, oh, he wasn't like preaching like this is a lifesaver. He was just telling his story of what happened.
Yeah. And,
listen, I look at Aaron Rodgers like, it's fine. Like, that's what Aaron wants to do with his time. Go right ahead. I do feel that Aaron is getting weird. He's gotten progressively weirder the more he has let us in. It's a little bit like Tom Cruise. When we didn't know anything about him, it was probably better. And it's probably better that we don't know all this stuff about Aaron. It's kind of like, Aaron, you don't really need to share that. I get why, I understand you're kind of opening up a little bit more. I get that, but,
well, and the other thing I will point out is that he had to go to South America or whatever because, ayahuasca is like a Schedule I drug in the United States. So you can't do that here. I mean, that's completely illegal. But if he was doing it there, I mean, in some of the cultures there, they take that very seriously. Okay. I'm not saying you should be like, and when I'm talking about research, if they're doing research on this, they're giving people like tiny little doses and it's in a controlled environment,
right.
To make sure people don't, and yes, I think there's some research showing that some people have done like marijuana or done LSD or something and it triggered a psychotic break and they became schizophrenic or something. There is a percentage that happens to, even with marijuana, which is, but again, it's a complicated thing, man. Like, people can have really bad reactions to the drugs that you see advertised on TV. So,
yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of doing his own thing. Kind of he's got a little Kyrie Irving in him. They're both kind of out there on their own deal.
Well, it's kind of, if you think about it, you remember you've heard of the term self-actualization?
Yeah.
I think the older people get, the more they self-actualize, and they kind of like it's like as you get older, you start seeing people. It's like, oh, that guy has tattoos now, or this person, dresses this way, or this person drives this car, or this person has this hobby, or this person hangs out with these people. Like, people kind of self-actualize, and this is kind of what he's self-actualizing into. I did think it was interesting that Colin Cowherd was talking about, if he had a wife, then maybe he'd be a little bit different. And it's kind of, and he's like, because the wife holds you accountable, and as we're both married, I can tell you that's kind of true. There is kind of something to be said for that, because your life isn't all about you, it's about someone else. Especially if you're married and you have kids. Then your life is about your wife and your kids. So you can't just make decisions all about yourself. So I do agree with Colin Cowherd and other people saying Aaron Rodgers is kind of selfish. He does kind of seem that way.
Yeah, and why does, I guess my bigger question is, why does he feel the need to tell us all this stuff? Like, that to me says more about what's going on with you than if you actually do it. Like, I'm sure there are other players that have done this and haven't told us about it. So the fact that he's got to come out and now tell us everything that's going on, it's like, okay.
Well, it seems to be, I listened to some of the podcasts that he did where he was talking about it, and it seems to be that, like, he just feels like he's more comfortable with himself so he can talk about this stuff. You know, which I guess I understand to an extent, but I don't know. Whatever. I mean, I did, oddly enough, I was on YouTube like yesterday or the day before, and Jake Plummer, former NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
He works on, I forget what it is, but he like works for a company, or he founded a company that makes like mushrooms.
Okay.
Like, whatever. And I guess they're working on the benefits of that or something like that. So yeah, it is kind of a, and it's fun. It's funny because Aaron Rodgers like got the long hair and he just looks kind of hippie-ish and kind of stuff. And if you see Jake Plummer, same kind of deal, and he's like talking about mushrooms, and Aaron Rodgers is talking about ayahuasca. So
hey, and listen, I'm not judging. You live your life, man. Good for you. You're not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
Like I have zero problem with if that's what Aaron wants to do. I do think it's just he's kind of an interesting psychological test case in the sports world today of how things are changing and what's going on. So listen, to each his own. If you feel like trying something, go for it. You're not going to see me doing it, but hey,
Like I said, there are risks to it, and there is research showing that there's risks to it. So,
All right. So you have another topic, or you want me to?
I'm trying to think. Go ahead. All
right.
See
if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, one of our legendary sports takes is that the Patriots and Bill Belichick. We want to talk about. By the way, talking about getting weird. Okay, they're getting weird. So our take has basically been Belichick has won so much that he needs something to challenge him. So, it started out with, you guys think I can't win with offense? We're going to trade for Randy Moss and get Wes Welker and throw the ball all over the place. And then it's like, oh no, you think we need a lot of offense? No. We're going to get 5'10" lacrosse players to play wide receiver. We're going to draft Division II players. And we're going to kick your ass anyway because we got Tom Brady. And then it's like, you know what? I don't need Tom Brady. You know what? Screw that. I'm going to win with a rookie. I'm going to go to the playoffs with a rookie, and I don't need that. And so the newest form of trying. Can
I just say that I there's an analogy I've been coming up with where Belichick's kind of like a magician, right? He pulls something and then he goes, and for my next trick, 5'10" wide receiver out of a hat. It's like.
Yeah, so this is kind of like for my next trick with the Patriots. Now, this year they're having a former defensive coordinator be the former defensive coordinator and a special teams coach call the plays. Well, we actually don't know who's calling the plays, but those are the offensive coaches for the second-year quarterback are two defensive coaches, and it's like, and they have no vertical threat down the field, really. Right? I wrote this down. They're spending $30 million on their tight ends. Okay? They're spending $50 million on their receivers and tight ends as a whole, and they have one of the worst receiving cores in the NFL. So not only are they did they spend a whole bunch of money especially last season, they're spending lots of money on this stuff, and it's really not any good. So I think, I don't get it. It's one of those things where it's like, if anybody, and I've heard this several times, if anybody but Bill Belichick was doing this, any other coach, they would be getting criticized like crazy. But because it's
Belichick's still getting criticized. Right. People are still like, what is he doing?
But because it's Belichick, they're still we'll see. This might work. I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
Well, by the way, not only are Joe Judge and Matt Patricia defensive coaches, they were head coaches, and they failed at that.
Right.
So, I don't understand.
That's kind of par for the course for Belichick's assistants. I mean, most of them don't do very well. So they lost their offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels is the head coach of the Raiders. He took a bunch of coaches with him. There's two of Belichick's sons are on the coaching staff. So this is starting to feel like a college football team where the coach has been there way too long and he doesn't trust anybody. and he won't bring in anybody else. So he's only going to work with people that he knows. So
right.
That's where this becomes a problem.
And I think some people may be underrating the loss of McDaniels. I think, but different. He's not going to be the same as the other Patriots coaches because McDaniels tried to coach the Broncos. He had some success early, and then he screwed some stuff up, and he apparently even admitted that he screwed some stuff up, and he realized he was being too arrogant and too full of himself, and you can't really be like that when you haven't accomplished anything. Now he goes to the Raiders. I think he's going to be really successful with the Raiders because I think he's a really good play caller, and now he's got Derek Carr, and now he's got Derek Carr, Devontae Adams. I think they're going to be really successful. So, yeah, the Patriots really are going to miss him, especially Mac Jones, who's only in his second year, okay? Especially the second year. I mean, you think about it. You start off your first year. He had some success last year, and then toward the end of the year, he kind of tailed off because teams kind of get the book on you, and you kind of figure it out. So the second year is kind of tough. We need to see, can you make some adjustments and continue to be successful? And how the hell are Matt Patricia and Joe Judge going to be able to coach him up so he can be a success, so he can reach whatever his potential is?
And this was one of my big criticisms of the Dolphins last year is we've got two offensive coordinators, and then the quarterback's coach is calling the plays. So
yeah,
who's in charge? Number one. Number two, none of those coaches had ever coached a young quarterback in the NFL before, right? So it's like, why? It makes no sense for you to do it this way. Like, there's no reason for this. You're just deciding you know better than everybody else. So we'll see how the Patriots do, but I can't believe it. The Dolphins have been, a mess for such a long time, and the Dolphins probably have a better roster than the Patriots do.
Yeah.
They probably have better players at this point. So it's like, we'll see. And, Nick Wright was on Colin Cowherd's podcast. Last week they were talking about this. And basically Nick Wright thinks the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New England Patriots are going to win about the same amount of games. And he also, that may be a little bit over the top, but he also said that, so Belichick's only won with one quarterback. So what if, Andy Reid goes out with Mahomes and wins 2 or 3 more Super Bowls and, Belichick, falls on his face and can't win playoff games anymore? Like, when we're having the legacy conversation, I think Belichick's space is pretty well secure, but, Andy Reid has gone to the playoffs, gone to Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So on different teams. So it's kind of like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But anyway, listen, I'll be honest. I'm full disclosure, I'm an active Patriot hater. Can't stand them.
Yeah.
When Tom Brady left, I rooted harder for the Patriots to lose. I want the Patriots to lose even more now. And I have no problem with Brady winning.
You want to have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge call the plays on offense? Have at it. Let me know how it works out for you.
Yeah. So as a Dolphins fan, I'm thrilled. Go ahead. Keep doing stupid shit. Go ahead. Have fun with this.
For my next trick, I finished 6-11.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what does Belichick think he's going to do? I'm going to retire in a couple years and my son's going to take over as the head coach?
Yeah. This has kind of a Los Angeles Lakers feel to it, right? Where you got it's family, and then you have a bunch of people around you who are telling you what to do, and they don't really know what the fuck they're doing. And you're kind of, you're kind of struggling. So,
yeah.
Anywho, yeah, I don't think I have a rant I can do, but other than that, I don't think I really had anything else. I mean, unless you wanted to talk about Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, he doubled down on his trade request, so
yeah. The thing is, but again, with that, like they tell, they come out with this stuff and they tell us, oh, this happened. Do we know that happened? Like, this is like this is where I have a hard time with some of the sports media sometimes, where he gave the owner an ultimatum. It's either me or the coach and the GM. You got to get rid of one of us. First of all, I don't think Kevin Durant really wants that out, number one, and I certainly the team doesn't want that out. So, and then the owner responds to it right away, like he's got a response queued up to it. Something seems a little fishy there, number one. Number two, I love how everyone's surprised. Oh, the Celtics are interested. Like, you think
there were like 20 teams interested,
right?
Or something.
You think the Celtics aren't interested? You think the Celtics weren't interested? And I love we talked about this before, but I love the nonsense trade offers. We'll give you Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart in the first round pick. What do you think? And it's like, have you been paying attention at all? The reason he's not on
and then the Nets are like, we want Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. It's like, and Robert Williams and Marcus Smart. It's like, all right, do you want Brad Stevens too? You want to throw in the TD Bank Garden too?
But
Like, what do you want?
That's at least a little more reasonable to what Brooklyn really wants. If that's what it's going to take to get, so I think, I think it's interesting. I think Durant could push himself to any team that he wanted if he basically made it clear to Brooklyn that's the only team he'll play for. He could get there if he wanted to. I don't know that he's gonna do that, but I think this is just kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck in this kind of place with it, and I don't really think much is going to change with it.
Yeah, because I just, someone, like I said, it's like a game of chicken. Somebody's got to, when you're negotiating, someone's got to come down on their offer first. Or someone's either got to come down on the offer or someone's got to go up on their offer in order to meet somewhere where you can possibly do a deal. And it doesn't seem like anybody's ready to do that yet. There's not a lot of urgency.
Yeah.
So, I don't really know. I don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, I guess he'll get traded eventually, but I still kind of think he's going to start off the season there. And people are like, well, Kyrie Irving could get traded to the Lakers. Possibly. But, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, And, I mean, they, I guess the Lakers said they'd offer that second first-round pick that they were kind of not willing to offer. But the deal's still not done. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that it really matters. The Lakers aren't winning the championship next year.
Yeah, and I think this idea that, looking at the Gobert trade and then Durant's going to get more than that. Well, first of all, you really can't, because in the NBA, you can't trade your draft picks more than 7 years from where you are now, and you can't trade your first round pick in consecutive years. So there's no way, there's no mechanism for Kevin Durant to get 7 first round picks or something. Like it's not possible for that to happen. So, I think most of these trade requests are ridiculous. I'm not sure where I'm at with the Kevin Durant story that he's, basically giving the owner ultimatums. I don't really know that I believe any of that's true. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem like the kind of guy that does that.
And he hasn't talked about it. He has not talked about it publicly at all. He's not said one thing publicly. We really don't know where he's at. We have reporters telling us stuff, but we don't know where he's really at. And that's kind of been my thing the whole time. We don't know. I watched the Derek Jeter documentary on ESPN. It's called The Captain. And my initial thought was that Derek Jeter's not that interesting. Like, I don't understand why it's a 7-part series about Derek Jeter. It's like, wow, this is really not, And I will say it is good. It's very good, very well done. But it's more of like a history of baseball for the last 20 years than it is, or 25 years, than it is just about Derek Jeter. I think that Derek Jeter seems like a really really good guy, and seems to do things the right way. A lot of stuff kind of happened around him just because he played for the Yankees and he was a well-known star that he really didn't have anything to do with. Great, and listen, no disputing him as a player. Great player, Hall of Famer, the whole 9 yards. And so I thought, it was kind of interesting looking at how big a deal baseball used to be. Even 15 years ago. It's nothing like that now. Like the Yankees Red Sox series in 2004 where the Red Sox come back from 3-0. Like that was incredible. Like, we don't have stuff like that in baseball anymore. The stuff in baseball now is like, how exactly did the Astros cheat? And, how do we, how do we make sure we're hitting home runs and striking people out? It's just not, it's nowhere near like it used to be. I did find the stuff interesting about how he became CEO of the Marlins, and then basically as usual with the Marlins, the owner basically is not committed. So Jeter's like, you know what, you guys don't care that much about winning, so I'm getting out of here. And I think that,
right.
So I think that was interesting. And then, all of the New York media stuff that they make up about Derek Jeter was kind of interesting. He would go out somewhere and they would make up some story about how he did this or said that, and most of the time it was not even remotely true. So I thought that was interesting. And then, by the end of it, they're giving Derek Jeter credit for not saying anything to the media and not creating controversy. And I get that, but it's kind of he's definitely one of the most boring athletes that we've had, least quotable,
right.
Guys that we've had. But it was cool in the documentary. He does open up about some stuff, and he does talk about some stuff that's probably pretty difficult. He talks about his relationship with Alex Rodriguez, and I thought that I thought that was interesting. It's just the two paths of the two guys, how Jeter could deal with this on a daily basis and was okay with it, and Alex Rodriguez really struggled to figure out where his place was, and it definitely affected their relationship. But yeah, it's well done. I don't think we needed 7 parts on it. But everything's too long, and nowadays, and I will say this, the documentaries, the way that they're made now is so amazing. Like, I was watching, some of the first couple seasons of the 30 for 30 documentaries on ESPN. And it's funny, that's like 13 years ago now. And it's like, wow, the amount of work that these filmmakers do and the way that these things look now, it's just even in, a little over 10 years, it's changed a whole lot. So I think that's kind of the way it is now. If you're anybody, you're going to have a documentary that's, at least a few parts. We did 10 a 10-part documentary on the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
So,
well, I thought it was interesting what you're saying about how it's just like how baseball used to be and how it's not like that anymore. I mean, I was looking at this. Aaron Judge has like 46 home runs, and it's August 14th. I mean, he could finish with in the 60s of home runs. But and again, I mean, I know the record. Obviously, that record fell in '98, but it is just kind of interesting. Like, you remember when that was going on. It was like with that, and then when Bonds broke McGuire's record, it was like every day on SportsCenter, like everyone's like, "Oh, how many home runs does he have?" And we just don't, we don't really, I don't even know that we do that necessarily with a record in the NFL. I mean, like, we didn't do that with like the single season touchdown pass record. Like, it's, when it happens, it's like, oh, cool, but it's just, so
yeah.
I don't know.
I think the way that we consume this stuff is completely different now, and But so before we get into your rant, I wanted to give a shout out to Vin Scully. Died last week.
Yeah.
And legendary broadcaster, one of the greatest of all time. And he's just got
some legendary calls.
Oh, yeah.
Kirk Gibson here with 2 bad knees. Yep. You talk about a roll of the dice. This is it.
Kirk Gibson home run, the ball going through Buckner's legs.
Behind the bag.
You can hear his voice with all of this stuff. And I watched I saw the highlights of they had the Field of Dreams game the other night. And they had a hologram of Harry Carey singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" in the 7th inning, it was actually pretty cool. I thought it was real. Like, somebody, I was like, oh, that's a hologram? Wow. So yeah, the technology's pretty amazing. But but yeah, Vin Scully, 67 years broadcasting games. It's incredible. And I heard Al Michaels was on the Dan Patrick Show talking about it, and basically how this is the guy that we all copied. This is our idol. This is the guy that we looked up to when we were doing games. We were all trying to sound like him, and so. And it's sad because, broadcasters now aren't really allowed the leeway to just tell stories and, in the middle of when things are going on. Like you have to be much more buttoned up and tuned in to exactly what's going on the field. But, Vin Scully, you're a legend, and you will be missed.
All right. So, I wrote up I had a rant real quick. It's not, put it this way, it's not exactly sports related, but I'm willing to bet that, there's plenty of sports fans who are into this movie. Okay. So, I know this is a sports podcast, but sometimes things happen outside of sports, and I'm compelled to talk about them. A couple weeks ago, I learned that they're remaking the movie Roadhouse, and it pissed me off so much that I had to do a rant about it. Okay? Why did it piss me off? Because Roadhouse is a quintessential 80s movie. The mullets, the uncomfortable-looking jeans, the smoking, the fact that everybody always looks really sweaty, as if they didn't have air conditioning in the 80s, the cheesy dialogue, the fact that everybody looks so old in the 80s. I mean, seriously, if you were 35 in the 80s, you look like you were 52. Part of the appeal of older movies is you can look back to a different time and realize how different everything was, especially in comparison to now. Now, I'm not against remakes, but some movies I feel like should just be left alone. What's next? Field of Dreams? Back to the Future? Goonies? Karate Kid? Damn it, they already fucked that one up. RoboCop? Yeah, they screwed that one up too. Anyway, look, some pieces of art are inextricably linked to the time they were created. Okay, Roadhouse may have made sense in the 80s and possibly the 90s, but that's about it. Now, I'm not saying that Roadhouse is some sort of highbrow artistic achievement. It's one of the best good-bad movies ever made. It's completely ridiculous. If there was a bar with that much fighting, no matter where it was, it would get shut down. I mean, at one point, Dalton, who's Patrick Swayze's character in the movie, rips out another guy's throat. The throat that gets ripped out was on a guy who had a mullet, he was wearing skin-tight jeans, and a denim shirt with no sleeves. Okay? Sorry, let me scroll down here a second. It was insane and also awesome at the same time. But that's why this movie should be left alone. The premises behind a lot of the 80s and 90s movies that we love are completely nuts. But in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't care. Either we didn't realize it or we simply accepted it and we enjoyed what we were watching. I mean, Point Break? Need I say more? Like I said, I'm not against remakes, but it all depends on how and why you're doing it. If you're going to remake a movie from Patrick Swayze's heyday, you better have a really awesome actor replacing him. So who did they get to replace him? Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, is he a fine actor? Sure. Has he been in some physically demanding roles that make me believe he could be the lead in a movie with a lot of fighting and violence? Yes. But he can't replace Patrick Swayze. Why would you want to? I don't want to hear someone else saying some of Patrick Swayze's lines. I mean, remember this line of dialogue? What if somebody calls my mother a whore? Is she? Look, if you want to recapture the magic of some of these older movies, borrow from them. Borrow some of the themes. Just call it something else. John Wick was an original concept, and it has become successful. They're making parts 4 and 5 as we speak. I don't buy this idea that nobody will go to the theater unless they can watch characters they already know or see a remake of something they've already seen. Do better. And that concludes my rant.
I was just looking up Field of Dreams. They were turning it into a limited series until recently. Peacock dropped it. But
yeah, they've turned A League of Their Own into a series. Why?
I mean, if you asking the question, the answer is money. I mean, clearly that's the answer. But
I understand, but it's just, come on, guys.
Yeah, and they do. I do agree that these things do belong in their own time. Like I've been watching a lot of on YouTube. Like there's a whole industry of people who have YouTube channels where they watch movies for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, and it's it's some of them are pretty good. But it's, they're watching all these movies from the 80s and the 90s a lot of times, for the first time. And, I think it's fun, but they're not really go to the next level. They don't really understand. They're not getting the references. They don't look up any of the references so they know what's going on. They're not telling you, they're not giving you details about the movie or anything like that. So it's kind of like, okay, I get it, but I'm kind of watching you watch the movie, and that's enjoyable to see how people react to things, the first time. But yeah, and you can see why a lot of this stuff, like it fits exactly where it is. It's perfectly fine. We need to shoot for new ideas. Some of these things I'm okay with turning them into series. I get it, but yeah, I agree with you. Roadhouse is not the kind of movie that we need to memorialize. And
and then I read that they're saying, because in the movie he was a bouncer, he was a bouncer at a club in New York City, and then someone comes to him and says, "Hey, I want you to be a bouncer at this club out in the middle of nowhere." Which again, completely ridiculous premise, but at least it made sense that he was a bouncer already. In this movie, apparently Jake Gyllenhaal is going to play a former MMA fighter who becomes a bouncer at a bar, and I'm just like, are they going to make this like serious or something? And also, Sam Elliott was in Roadhouse. Who's going to play his character? Because you can't. I mean, Sam Elliott is just one of a kind. Like you can't replace that guy.
Yeah, I generally so I listen to this podcast a lot called The Rewatchables. It's on part of The Ringer.
Yeah.
And they ask a question at the they have these categories they go through, and then they ask a question: could this movie be remade as a 10-episode Netflix series? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Because it doesn't. It either has to live in that certain era. It doesn't make sense today. But the thing is, the way movies are made nowadays, right? They're not making a $25 million movie anymore. Like those are just they make that as a series. They don't spend. They either spend very little or an exorbitant amount. That movie that fits in the middle that we used to watch. Like the ones you described, Back to the Future, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They're not making those movies anymore. So it becomes so that's what they turn into. They turn into series because they want to get people's attention to get their new.
Well, and then the problem with that is some of these series they should just be a 2-hour movie, because then what ends up happening is you get 8 to 10 episodes, and you're like, there's like 5 or 6 episodes. You're like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need this backstory. I don't need any of this. I'm not interested in this. This character's not that interesting. I don't need to spend 8 hours with
What we do need, though, is Scorsese spending 3.5 hours on The Irishman. That we have to have.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, you got to don't make it too long. Well, like 2 hours and 15 minutes, that's good. But if you can't say what you need...
Yeah, you go beyond that, I'm getting
right. If you can't say what you need to say in 2 hours and 15 minutes, you're not doing your job, man. But anyway, we could go on all day about that. So, but before we go, so I was thinking about this, because the World Cup is coming up. So
that's
Thanksgiving...
Right. November?
Yeah, November. Yeah, Thanksgiving is going to be a hell of a weekend. So we're going to have NFL football on Thursday, on that Thursday, Thanksgiving, like we always do. Friday, the United States is playing in the World Cup in the morning. Saturday, we have...
Which, do we know who they're going to be... We know who their group is.
They're playing... I think they're playing Wales. I think it's the first game. So
okay.
So they're playing on...
It's the U.S., England, Wales, and Iran. Okay.
So they're playing Wales on that Friday. Then Saturday we get Ohio State, Michigan, and all the rivalry college football games. And then we get, and then there'll be World Cup games every day too. Yeah. So we get, college football, pro football, the World Cup all at the same time. It's gonna be a hell of a, Black Friday weekend or whatever. And then, it goes goes well into December. So anyway, yeah. So nothing else. I don't think there's nothing big sports wise coming up this week. So, but we'll be checking in on, we'll check in on the ridiculous takes from all the preseason games and all that stuff. So, anywho, did you have any recommendations for TV shows?
Okay. Well, maybe I've said this before. What We Do in the Shadows season 4 is on. You can rewatch the episodes on Hulu. That's really funny. My wife and I watched the show Resident Alien. It's on the Sci-Fi Channel. It's pretty funny. Beyond that, I don't know. I watch a lot of Naked and Afraid because it's kind of. In fact, they're doing one Naked and Afraid Frozen where they're like in extreme cold, and I'm like, okay, people, I think we're getting a little crazy here, but I guess if you can insure it, then you can do it.
Yeah, we want it to be death defying. I started watching the Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. I watched the first 2 episodes. It's okay. I'm not sure what they're going for, but it's okay. Most of that stuff is okay. What else was I watching? Yeah, but that's old stuff. Yeah, I don't have anything else new to recommend. But anyway.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for us, folks. Make sure you like, subscribe, tune in, hit the thumbs up button. Send us any comments if you think we're great or you think we suck. Send us comments anyway.
And don't do psychedelic
That's right.
drugs.
Stay away from ayahuasca. Stick to edibles and things like that.
If you leave the country, though, I don't have anything to say about it. You do it.